she wasn't supposed to be a Hollywood star. Stella Stevens' story began far from the spotlight, in the small town of Yazoo City, Mississippi, where she was born Estelle Eggleston in 1938. By the time she was 4, her family had moved to Memphis, and life was anything but glamorous. Raised in a modest, working-class home by her mother, she carried the struggles of small-town life long before Hollywood ever knew her name. But what happened next shocked everyone. One moment she was a teenage mom in Memphis, the next she was gracing the pages of Playboy and stealing scenes alongside Jerry Lewis. The question is, what happened in between? The answer is everything Hollywood never wanted you to see. By just 15, Stella Stevens was already turning heads. At 16, she left high school behind and walked down the aisle. At 17, she was a young mother, raising her son Andrew Stevens, who would one day follow her into acting. But the marriage quickly collapsed, and Stella found herself divorced and on her own before most teenagers even finished school. Instead of giving in, she fought back. She returned to her studies at Memphis State College while raising her son, carving out a new path for herself. On campus, she discovered the stage, joined theater groups, and picked up modeling gigs with local photographers. Every contest, every photo shoot was a step closer to something bigger. Then came the break. One of her photos landed in the hands of Columbia Pictures. They saw potential, and they saw a star. She was given a screen test, packed her bags, and headed for Los Angeles. Columbia reinvented her as Stella Stevens, a name they believed carried more shine, more allure. Her first role came in the 1959 musical comedy Say One For Me, alongside Bing Crosby and Debbie Reynolds. The part was small, but Stella made it impossible to ignore. Critics may not have cheered, but they took notice. And so did the Golden Globes. In 1960, Stella Stevens' star exploded. She wasn't just another actress clawing her way through Hollywood, she was crowned most promising newcomer, and almost immediately, the world couldn't take its eyes off her. That same year, she posed for Playboy, and the message was clear: Stella wasn't going to play the role of the timid starlet. She was bold, unapologetic, and fully aware of the power she held. By the end of 1959, she had already inked a deal with 20th Century Fox before quickly moving over to Columbia, as studios scrambled to own a piece of her rising fame. But behind the glitter, she was still a single mom from Memphis, trying to survive in one of the toughest industries on earth. Hollywood saw her as the new blonde bombshell. Stella, however, saw herself as something more, and she was determined to prove it. Then came January 1960. Playboy released a centerfold that turned the industry upside down. Stella wasn't just another pretty face tucked inside its pages, she was the centerpiece, radiating confidence and control. The photos weren't coy, they weren't submissive, they were bold, electric, and unforgettable. That issue became one of the best sellers of the year, and overnight, Stella Stevens was no longer just an actress, she was a sensation. And make no mistake, this wasn't luck. Stella wanted the spotlight. She knew Hollywood loved its women blonde, curvy, and silent. But Stella Stevens was ready to break that mold, and rewrite the rules. The Playboy spread didn't just turn heads, it turned Hollywood upside down. Columbia Pictures saw her fire and moved quickly, locking Stella Stevens into a long-term contract. To them, she wasn't just another actress, she was their secret weapon. Their answer to Marilyn Monroe, only sharper, funnier, and far more defiant. And Columbia wasted no time unleashing her. She lit up red carpets, posed for daring pin-ups, and gave interviews that made censors sweat. When asked about her image, she didn't play coy. "I'm not the girl next door," she declared. "I'm the girl across the hall, with the open door." That line sent studio heads into a panic, but fans couldn't get enough. Stella wasn't selling innocence, she was selling honesty. On screen, she was just as fearless. Small roles in B-movies and slapstick comedies might have been forgettable for others, but Stella made every frame hers. Weak scripts didn't matter, she injected them with raw energy. She was brash, funny, unfiltered, and completely unafraid to push boundaries. Critics struggled to define her. To some, she was just another blonde poured into a tight dress. But to audiences, she was electric, a woman who refused to play by Hollywood's safe little rules. Others recognized her potential, yet many doubted she would endure. However, behind the scenes, she was putting in the effort. She trained in acting with esteemed coaches and diligently honed her craft. She aspired to achieve more than just cheesecake poses and minor roles. By 1962, her parts were expanding. She was no longer merely a model transitioning into acting. She was beginning to demonstrate that she could truly stand on her own, and she hadn't even reached her peak yet. Her career was on the verge of taking off. In 1963, Stella secured the role that would define her, Stella Pertai in The Nutty Professor. This was a Jerry Lewis comedy, wild, zany, and extravagant, which turned into a box office success. Yet, Stella was not just eye candy, she provided the film with balance. Where Lewis went all out, she reined it in. Composed, intelligent, effortlessly cool, and humorous without overexerting herself. Audiences took notice, as did casting directors. For the first time, Stella had a leading role that showcased more than just her looks. She was not the ditzy blonde or the punchline in the bedroom. She possessed timing and presence. She could interact with a comedic genius while still commanding her scenes. And she looked breathtaking while doing it. This role rapidly elevated her profile. Suddenly, she was everywhere, on television talk shows, in movie magazines, and at red carpet events. The Nutty Professor was not merely a comedic success, it transformed her into a household name. However, despite this surge of momentum, she sensed the constraints being placed around her. Scripts continued to arrive. Scripts featuring roles labeled as sexy secretary, hot nurse, or showgirl number 2. She began to decline these offers. She sought depth, but the studios were not providing it. Jerry Lewis, who directed and starred in The Nutty Professor, later remarked that she was a pleasure to work with, professional and astute. Yet, others in the industry were not as kind. Directors branded her as difficult when she requested improved lines. Producers claimed she was overly opinionated. In other words, she refused to play the fool, which made them uneasy. Stella's connection with Hollywood was already beginning to fracture. Despite her rising stardom, she was not going to be shaped into someone else's idea of success. In a studio system that favored compliant blondes, this made her a liability. Yet, she did not retreat. She pushed back harder, unwilling to soften for the cameras or silence herself for the executives. It wasn't long before this defiance began to reflect in the roles she chose next. Typecast, she grew weary of it. After The Nutty Professor, the offers continued to pour in, but most were repetitive. Seductive sidekick, playful distraction, that blonde in the background. Stella accepted some of these roles out of necessity, but each one left her increasingly exasperated. She appeared in films like Advance to the Rear, The Courtship of Eddie's Father, and Sinan. While these movies provided her with more screen time, they offered little in terms of substance. Her characters were eye-catching, yet they were devoid of depth. No character development, no agency, just costumes and one-liners. Even when the scripts were passable, the camera consistently focused more on her body than her face. Off-screen, Stella was becoming more vocal about it. She did not conceal her frustration during interviews. She criticized producers who created shallow female characters and called out directors who were only interested in her appearance. Columbia began to distance themselves. They disapproved of her attitude. She refused to engage in the PR game. She avoided press events. She sought better roles, not just more promotional images. She began taking guest spots on television shows like Ben Casey, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and Bonanza. On TV, she had greater freedom to perform. She didn't have to be the punchline. She could be resilient, intelligent, and even unappealing. That was her goal, to have range. However, by 1966, she felt drained. She possessed the looks, the talent, and the accolades, yet still felt trapped. She wasn't the only one who noticed this. A column at that time referred to her as underutilized and undervalued, a sharp actress in a lackluster system. She realized that if she didn't alter her course soon, she would become a mere footnote in someone else's film. Thus, she began to push herself harder, seeking opportunities beyond the conventional starlet path. The next chapter marked a turning point, as she broke the mold and severed ties. By the late 60s, Stella Stevens had reached her limit. She was finished with being Hollywood's pin-up doll. The tight dresses, superficial roles, and phony smiles no longer appealed to her. She refused to be mere decoration. She desired to be taken seriously. She began to decline many offers. The sexy nurse or the flirtatious barmaid? No thanks. Directors were not pleased. They labeled her as difficult, a tag often assigned to any woman who sought more than just a swimsuit appearance. But Stella was unfazed. She was pursuing different roles, ones with substance. In 1969, she took on The Mad Room, a dark psychological thriller where she portrayed a troubled woman with secrets. It didn't make headlines, but it provided her with something fresh, a character with depth. In Rage, she starred alongside Glenn Ford, playing a grounded, serious nurse in a drama centered on toxic waste exposure. It was far from glamorous, but that was precisely the point. She also immersed herself in theater and low-budget independent films, not for fame, but for the sake of freedom. At this stage, she had no agent screening offers. She didn't want a studio dictating her career. She sought complete control, even if it meant stepping out of the limelight. While other actresses struggled to remain in the tabloids, Stella quietly distanced herself from the industry machine. In interviews, Stella Stevens never played it safe. She called Hollywood out for what it was, a machine that treated women like ornaments instead of artists. "I'm not a prop," she said bluntly. "I'm a person. Write me that way." She challenged male directors who reduced her to a body and applauded the rare female voices fighting to tell the truth. Stella wasn't just stepping out of the box, she was ripping it to shreds. By the early 1970s, her refusal to play along came at a price. Offers slowed, not because she'd lost her talent, but because she refused to bow. Many actresses would have disappeared quietly. Not Stella. Her comeback would arrive in a place no one expected, and it would remind Hollywood exactly who she was. In 1971, she walked onto the set of the Poseidon Adventure with a fire in her gut. She wasn't there to bat her lashes or play the decoration. She was there to be raw. As Linda Rogo, a former escort locked in a stormy marriage to Ernest Borgnine's tough cop, Stella stripped away glamour. Their arguments weren't scripted fluff, they were jagged, ugly, and heartbreakingly real. Linda was loud, messy, and unpolished. For the first time in years, Stella didn't soften a thing. She showed the world a woman with edges, and it made her unforgettable. Her hair was soaked, her makeup vanished within minutes, but none of that mattered. Stella Stevens didn't shine because she was polished, she shined because she was raw. On a set filled with big names, she became magnetic not by being glamorous, but by being human. The shoot was grueling. Weeks in cold water tanks, climbing twisted metal, hauling herself across slippery debris. It tested every actor's endurance, but Stella fought harder than most, especially for her character. She clashed with director Ronald Neame, demanding that Linda Rogo be more than a stereotype. Not just a loudmouth with a tragic past, but a layered woman with heart and grit. And Stella made sure Linda mattered. When the Poseidon Adventure hit theaters in 1972, it exploded into a phenomenon, pulling in over $100 million and defining the disaster film era. And at its core was Stella's Linda, messy, brash, heartbreaking. Her death scene, a gut-wrenching sacrifice for the group, left audiences stunned. Critics who once dismissed her as another blonde bombshell now called her unexpectedly moving. For the first time, the world wasn't talking about Stella Stevens' beauty. They were talking about her acting. It should have been the turning point, the role that opened new doors. But in Hollywood, even after proving herself, Stella found the same walls still standing. The industry was at a loss when faced with a sex symbol who refused to remain quiet. Stella understood that surpassing that role would be challenging, but she was unconcerned about doing so. She had established her presence and did it on her own terms. No one was eager to include her. Following the Poseidon adventure, Stella Stevens could have easily relied on her fame from disaster films. Instead, she opted for a complete change in direction. With Hollywood not providing substantial roles, she took it upon herself to create her own. Her ambition was to direct. In the 1970s, this was not just uncommon, it was nearly unheard of for a woman. She began with small steps. Stella immersed herself in directing and script development. She observed the operations of sets. She familiarized herself with camera setups, blocking, lighting, everything studios presumed she wouldn't grasp. Men dismissed her. Some even bluntly advised her to remain in front of the camera. She ignored them. In 1979, she directed her debut short film, The American Heroine. Although it didn't receive distribution, it provided her with validation. She realized she had the capability. A decade later, she directed a television movie titled The Ranch. The narrative revolved around women employed in a legal brothel in Nevada. It was raw, intelligent, and focused on female experiences. Critics were divided, yet the film ignited discussions. Stella was indifferent to accolades. What mattered to her was making a statement. She also ventured into television directing. During the 80s, she directed episodes of series like Hotel. Once more, it was a struggle. Producers doubted her choices. Crews questioned her judgment. Nevertheless, she persevered. She wasn't flamboyant behind the camera, she was consistent, well-prepared, and resilient. Stella also championed other women aspiring to enter the industry. She guided younger actresses, offered behind-the-scenes insights, and vocally supported female directors in interviews. She was straightforward. If you expect a man to hand you a camera, you will be waiting indefinitely. The film industry scarcely recognized her contributions. She never secured a high-budget project. She didn't achieve a breakout success as a director, but she made it work regardless. At a time when most actresses faded away by 40, Stella was continuously reinventing herself. She didn't chase tabloid headlines or stage some glittery comeback tour. Instead, she built her second act with grit, with craft, and on her own terms. And while the press eventually stopped calling, Stella Stevens never stopped making noise. Her private life was just as unconventional. Over the years, two long-term relationships stood out, one with actor Skip Ward, the other with rock guitarist and producer Bob Kulick. With Skip, it began in the 1960s. He was a fellow actor, sometimes a producer, and their names floated in the gossip columns from time to time. But the details were always murky. They never married, never gave interviews together, and rarely stepped out as a couple. Friends described it as fiery and unpredictable, sometimes intense, sometimes distant, always complicated. Some swore it was real. Others believed it never quite made it past rumor. Either way, Skip Ward remained woven into Stella's story, even if Hollywood pretended not to notice. But her most enduring partnership came years later. In 1983, Stella found something steadier with Bob Kulick, the rock guitarist whose credits included Kiss, Meat Loaf, and Lou Reed. Where Skip had been turbulent, Bob became a fixture, an anchor in the later decades of her life. Bob Kulick wasn't part of Hollywood's film machine, but he understood the relentless grind of the entertainment world. Together, he and Stella built something rare in that industry, a partnership that lasted nearly 37 years, longer than most marriages under the spotlight. They never chased red carpets or headlines. What they had was quiet, steady, and deeply loyal. Friends recalled how Bob stood by Stella when she stepped away from acting to focus on real estate, and she supported him through decades of touring, producing, and carving out his own place in rock history. They balanced each other, each giving the other space to thrive. That bond lasted until tragedy struck in 2020, when Bob died of heart disease at just 70 years old. Stella never spoke about the loss publicly, but those close to her said it cut deep. By then, her Alzheimer's had already progressed, and the grief only added to the weight she carried. She never remarried after her first short-lived teenage marriage. She didn't need to. Stella's love life was always on her own terms, low profile, enduring, and private. No press statements, no staged photographs. Just real connection. In an industry obsessed with who stars dated, Stella proved that love didn't need an audience. They never got such satisfaction from Stella. She enjoyed living her life as she saw fit, with the door generally closed and the volume down. The fire never goes out, but fame does. She had left the spotlight by the 1990s, not because she was unable to land roles but rather because she didn't want the ones that were being offered. Women over 40 had a short memory in Hollywood, and those who didn't play the game had an even shorter one. She didn't voice any complaints. She turned around. Stella began flipping real estate after purchasing a ranch near Beverly Hills. She had excellent commercial sense, a keen sense of design, and no tolerance for the pretentious bullshit of Hollywood. She was renovating houses and amassing a modest wealth as other former celebrities vied for guest spots. She remained linked to the industry, nevertheless. She made a few appearances in independent movies and TV series, but only when the parts were worthwhile. She wasn't trying to attract attention. She didn't. She seems relieved to get off the red carpet, if nothing else. She remarked in an early 2000s interview that, "I traded heels for house keys, and I don't miss the heels." As her son Andrew Stevens' career flourished, Stella also helped him. After being a popular actor, he went on to become a producer and director. Although they didn't make a big deal out of their relationship, they clearly respected each other. For the most part, she had raised him alone. He was now competing in the industry that was unsure of how to handle his mother. She continued to do interviews occasionally and didn't hold back. She discussed how women were viewed in the 1960s, how appearance was valuable, and how she had always been undervalued. She was blunt, but not resentful. She continued to be involved in women's rights organizations as well. She gave speeches at gatherings. Younger women were mentored by her. Her experience served as evidence that you could make it through Hollywood without losing yourself, rather than as a warning. Stella did not disappear. Before the cameras instructed her to do so, she simply left. Her voice remained keen, her humor remained acerbic, and her attitude never wavered, even when the reporters stopped calling. The last thing that happened behind closed doors. Stella Stevens vanished from the public eye in the 2010s. Fans started to wonder where she had gone since she hadn't been in a big-budget movie in years. The reality was terrible and personal. Alzheimer's disease had been identified as Stella's condition. She was transferred to a long-term care facility in Los Angeles when her sickness worsened. Andrew, her son, remained beside her, assisting her in running her affairs and maintaining the tranquility of her life. Few friends came to visit. She refused to have the cameras returned. She didn't wish for sympathy. She was able to talk, laugh, and joke around throughout the early years of her disease. However, the illness gradually absorbed that as well. She was unable to conduct interviews at the end of 2010. She completely stopped going out in public. It wasn't until much later that word spread about her ailment. There were no headlines. A brief surge of internet messages from seasoned fans and movie buffs inquiring about her well-being and why no one seemed to notice her absence replaced the media circus and emotional departure. At the age of 84, she passed away on February 17, 2023. The report was confirmed by her son. No controversies, no mayhem, just a straightforward declaration. After a protracted illness, his mother had passed away. Her unique qualities were hardly mentioned in obituaries, which referred to her as a Hollywood icon and one of the greats of the 1960s. She wasn't well known for being flawless. She was well known for resisting, for being too assertive, too loud, and too much for the men who preferred her to be quiet. Stella received something better than the statues and honors to her late career. She lived her life as she saw fit. One woman embodied superhero perfection before Galadoo donned the cape. Lynda Carter. What, though, was it about her that attracted guys in the 1970s and continues to do so now? Let's return to the starting point. Childhood and improbable origins. On July 24, 1951, Lynda Carter was born in Phoenix, Arizona. She was the youngest of 5 children in a family that loved stories and music. Her mother, Juana, brought a strong Mexican heritage to their family, while her father, Colby, was a World War II veteran who went on to become a businessman. Lynda was forever impacted by Juana's teachings on resiliency and the importance of family. Lynda drew attention right away. She stood out due to her tall stature and innate grace. Her charm, however, was what had everyone talking. She debuted on television at the age of 5 on a local program. She was a born entertainer, calm and confident. Her family encouraged her and recognized her potential, allowing her to freely pursue her artistic interests. By the time she was in her teens, Lynda was seizing every chance to perform. She had the opportunity to perform in school musicals, and she joined the band Just Us because she loved music. She developed her stage presence and confidence by performing at local venues around Phoenix while singing lead vocals. These times were more than just pastimes. Her future was being shaped by them. Lynda chose the traditional path and enrolled at Arizona State University after high school. However, the lure of the limelight was too much. She left school during her second year to play in a band in Las Vegas. Although this leap was audacious, it was the beginning of something significant. Vegas served as a show business crash course. Lynda gained the ability to control the stage and handle the pressures of the entertainment industry. Glitz wasn't everything. There was intense competition and long hours. But Lynda took it all in and didn't back down. She was aware that skill was not the only factor in success. It required perseverance, hard work, and flexibility. Lynda was ready for more by the early 70s. In pursuit of her aspirations to pursue acting and music, she relocated to California. After being rejected from auditions, she went on odd jobs to help pay the bills, including teaching vocal lessons, waiting tables, and everything else she could to make ends meet. She got closer to saying yes with each no. Perseverance was the hallmark of Lynda's early years. She refused to allow the "she is defined by her struggles." Rather, she persisted, certain that her breakthrough was imminent. She will eventually become an icon as a result of her perseverance. Beauty queen to the national stage. Everything changed in 1972 when Lynda Carter took a risk. She competed in the Miss World USA pageant on behalf of Arizona. With her striking looks and unquestionable charm, she was tough to miss at 5 feet 9 inches. But the judges were impressed by more than simply her appearance. Lynda was the star of the program when she sang a number during the talent show. It wasn't only a win for her. It served as a springboard to stardom. Lynda's victory as Miss World USA thrust her into the public eye. She quickly left for London to battle against tough foreign competitors in the worldwide Miss World pageant. She advanced to the semi-finals thanks to her poise and self-assurance. Even though she didn't win, she made a lasting impact on the judges and viewers, demonstrating that she was more than just a title holder. Lynda's accomplishment in the pageant opened openings for her back home. She started getting contracts in the fashion industry, and modeling agencies flocked to sign her. Lynda, however, wasn't satisfied with merely posing for pictures. Modeling served as a tool. She knew it was time to pursue her true passion, which was acting. Lynda relocated to Los Angeles because she was determined to succeed. She concentrated on getting ready for a career on screen even though modeling helped pay the expenses. She studied acting with renowned instructor Charles Conrad, who is recognized for encouraging actors to discover their authenticity, in order to hone her craft. Linda gained the skills necessary to transform her innate gift into genuine star power thanks to these classes. Her efforts began to pay off by 1974. Linda landed small parts in television series such as Starsky and Hutch and Nakoma. Although the roles weren't very noteworthy, they demonstrated her range and personality on television. She was seen by casting directors as more than just a beauty queen, and they took notice. Linda had an advantage in Hollywood because of her pageant experience. She recognized the value of grace and presence, but she also knew that appearances wouldn't get her very far. Equipped with aspirations and developing skills, she was prepared for her breakthrough. It was also approaching sooner than anyone had anticipated. The audition that made all the difference. Linda Carter's turning point came in the middle of the 1970s. She had the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to try out for Wonder Woman after years of modest TV parts and commercials. A new actor was required by ABC to portray the Amazonian superhero. There was a lot on the line. The success of the show hinged on finding someone who could make the character, who was already renowned in the DC Comics universe, come to life. It wasn't an easy audition. The whole package, strength, intelligence, and humor, was what the producers were searching for. An actress who could do stunts and action scenes while maintaining the character's grace was required for the part. Linda had an advantage because of her elegance, beauty, and acting skills. Her experience performing and competing in pageants also helped. Later, Linda claimed that as soon as she entered the room, she connected with the persona. She recalled, "I just knew Wonder Woman was me." That assurance was evident. She was cast as Diana Prince, the Amazonian princess who is destined to save the world, following numerous screen tests and callbacks. Linda jumped right into the role when filming began in 1975. She demonstrated her commitment by performing several of her own stunts and collaborating closely with stunt teams. She also contributed to the creation of the classic costume. Coordinating with designers to create the red, white, and blue ensemble, which included bulletproof bracelets and a tiara. Viewers responded favorably to Linda's portrayal from the very first episode. She made Wonder Woman more than just a superhero by giving her depth. Diana Prince was real and relatable because of her combination of humor, compassion, and strength. The fans were captivated. Her combination of strength and beauty particularly appealed to males, while women viewed her as a representation of bravery and independence. Everyone Linda worked with behind the scenes respected her. Throughout lengthy shoots, her professionalism and positive outlook kept spirits high. Wonder Woman was an immediate hit when it debuted. Superhero TV was revolutionized by the show, and Linda Carter rose to fame. Both Wonder Woman and her admirers had discovered their ideal mate. Redefining the image of the superhero. Wonder Woman, starring Linda Carter, was a huge hit on television when it debuted on November 7, 1975. At the time, strong, independent female protagonists were uncommon, but Linda's performance was exceptional. She portrayed a superhero that exuded kindness in addition to strength and was not only strong. She was the ideal combination of toughness, charm, and attractiveness for many guys. A hero who could fight bad guys and still be friendly. World War II was the setting for the first season. Diana Prince was a secret Nazi fighter at night and a U.S. intelligence secretary by day. Diana was made smart and resourceful by Linda, who gave the role dimension. She was fearless, self-assured, and steadfast in her belief in justice as Wonder Woman. Viewers of all ages were moved by Linda's portrayal of the role, whether she was using the golden lasso or her bracelets to deflect bullets. The location shifted to contemporary America in the second season. Linda's performance remained unaffected by the change. She played the part with the same commitment, portraying Diana juggling her superhuman responsibilities with modern life. Her body took center stage. From intricate action sequences to staged battles, Linda executed a lot of her own stunts. She put in a lot of training to make Wonder Woman's accomplishments appear natural, which gave the part more authenticity. With its crimson bodice, star-studded blue shorts, and gold trimmings, the costume became a symbol unto itself. The ensemble was a striking homage to American ideals. It went from campy to iconic thanks to Linda's powerful physique and authoritative personality. Its bold design was liked by men, but what really made it memorable was Linda's self-assurance. Linda became a cultural phenomenon as a result of the show's success. She made appearances on talk shows, adorned magazine covers, and came to represent empowerment. Her charm enthralled even those who were not comic book fans. Linda Carter was more than just Wonder Woman. She was Wonder Woman. Millions were inspired by her unique combination of strength, style, and genuineness, which redefined what it meant to be a superhero both on and off screen. Charm goes beyond the outfit. Her fame extended beyond Wonder Woman. Her off-screen demeanor won her popularity, but the part made her renowned. During a period when many celebrities seemed aloof or unapproachable, Linda's warmth and relatability shone through every interview she did. Linda's charm and sharp wit were the talk of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or Dina. She gave followers a peek into her life on set by sharing humorous behind-the-scenes tales. Nor did she limit herself to glitzy stories. Linda spoke candidly about her hardships in Hollywood, her unwavering work ethic, and her faith in tenacity. She felt more like a coffee date person than a TV celebrity at these times. At conventions and public gatherings, Linda stands out for her sincere relationship with fans. She done more than simply sign autographs. She became involved. She frequently stayed longer than anticipated to talk and take pictures, and fans praised her for being polite, considerate, and leisurely. It was almost like catching up with a friend when I first met Linda. She was memorable because of her genuineness. She also talked openly about striking a balance between her regular life and celebrity. The demands of upholding Wonder Woman's reputation and the difficulties posed by ongoing public scrutiny were not concealed by Linda. Her candor struck a chord. Fans viewed her as someone who handled life's ups and downs gracefully in addition to being a glamorous icon. Linda's attraction was further enhanced by her fervor for activism. She embraced Wonder Woman's ideals by advocating for women's equality and empowerment. She did more than merely talk the talk. She advocated for significant change by using her position. She became a symbol of strength and authenticity as a result of her activities, which made it difficult to distinguish between her persona and her beliefs in real life. Linda was admired by men for more than simply her beauty or skill. Her honesty and ethics won her respect. She stood out because of her capacity to maintain her sense of reality in a world that frequently lacks it. Linda Carter was more than just a celebrity. She was authentic. A unique combination of intelligence, compassion, and beauty. Multi-talented appeal and music. Although the majority of fans were familiar with Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, her love of music showcased another aspect of her abilities. Singing was more than a pastime. The love lasted a lifetime. She followed her musical aspirations throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, playing to receptive crowds in concert halls and nightclubs. Linda's strong voice and effortless stage presence were on full display during her live performances. She was more than just a superhero when it came to connecting with her fans. She made the space cozy and inviting. Linda's performances demonstrated her variety and artistry, whether she was singing original songs or recreating oldies. Wonder Woman fans discovered a soulful, multi-talented musician. With the Linda Carter special in 1978, Linda made her music available on television. The performance demonstrated that she could enthrall audiences without a cape or lasso by fusing her vocals with stunning dance. Due to the success of the event, Linda Carter performed with celebrities including Tom Jones at the 1980 Linda Carter Encore. Her reputation as more than just an actor was solidified by these specials. She was a real performer. Music was not Linda's side project. She gave it everything she had. She frequently declared, "Sing has always been my first love," and it was evident. Her first album, Portrait, was released in 1978 as a result of her hard work. She demonstrated her dedication to the profession and her versatility by returning with Crazy Little Things in 2009, decades later. Fans, particularly men, found great resonance in her music and appreciated her ability to strike a balance between talent, beauty, and genuineness. For many, Linda's appeal was enhanced by the opportunity to see her perform live. She was more than simply a TV personality or superhero. She had depth and passion as a true artist. Linda didn't pursue fame or trends in her singing career. She wanted to give her audience a glimpse of herself. Her performances gave her admirers a fresh perspective on her as a lady who could transition between genres and media without losing her identity. Fans adored Linda even more because she saw music as more than just a job, it was her passion. An example of empowerment. Music, Linda Carter became a superhero, not just a character. Her depiction of Wonder Woman broke down barriers by showcasing a strong yet kind character. However, Linda's impact extended well beyond the screen. She accepted her position as a symbol of empowerment and used it to promote equality and motivate change. Supporting women's rights was one of Linda's greatest passions. She encouraged women to challenge social norms and spoke candidly about independence and self-assurance. She frequently said, "You can be strong and still be kind," which struck a deep chord. She talked about more than simply these principles. She experienced them firsthand. Linda took part in activities and gave assistance to groups that inspired women and urged them to realize their full potential. Linda's message of empowerment had an equally powerful effect on men. She broke the cliché of the traditional damsel in distress. Rather, it was her who saved the day. Off-screen as a fervent supporter of justice and on-screen as Wonder Woman. Her captivating blend of force and grace demonstrated that compassion need not be sacrificed for strength. Linda knew how important her duty was. It took more than simply acting to play Wonder Woman. It stood for something more significant. For young girls who recognized in her the potential of what they could do, she became a beacon of hope. Linda made an effort to engage with her admirers during public events, reaffirming that there were several ways to be strong. Being Wonder Woman wasn't a costume to her. She took her responsibility very seriously. Not just women, but everyone, admired her advocacy. Men admired her fortitude and sincerity. She changed the definition of leadership by emphasizing balance, integrity, and heart rather than domination. It wasn't just her roles that made Linda Carter an inspiration. Her beliefs and deeds inspired others. By adopting and embodying Wonder Woman's ideals, Linda demonstrated that superheroes aren't limited to comic books. They also exist in the actual world. She emerged as the quintessential role model, demonstrating how courage, compassion, and sincerity might bring about long-lasting transformation and reinterpret what it means to be a hero. Overcoming obstacles gracefully. Linda Carter had to adjust to the end of Wonder Woman in 1979. She was famous because of the part, but it also made her a stereotype. It was difficult for casting directors to see her as anything other than Diana Prince. Although it was difficult to break free from the superhero stereotype, Linda was adamant about demonstrating her versatility. She concentrated on lesser jobs to broaden her acting repertoire in the early 1980s. She had the opportunity to try out more dramatic roles in TV films like Born to be Sold, 1981, and The Last Song, 1980. Born to be Sold addressed societal themes, allowing Linda to demonstrate her depth, while The Last Song demonstrated her ability to handle emotional storylines. Although these projects weren't big blockbusters, they showed that she was dedicated to developing as an actress. In addition to the changes in her job, Linda's personal life was as turbulent. She separated from her first husband, Hollywood producer Ron Samuels, in 1984. Her ascent to popularity had accompanied their marriage, but the strain of her changing job and personal conflicts caused the breakup. Despite the fact that the divorce was public, Linda handled it with grace and decided to concentrate on her future plans. Linda took charge of her own destiny rather than pursuing instant fame. She started pursuing new hobbies after stepping away from prominent positions. Wonder Woman's financial security gave her the flexibility to choose which projects to work on. She also began devoting more time to her music, which remained a passion, and personal development. Linda had changed her priorities by the late 1980s. She began focusing on issues that shared her beliefs. She continued to be involved in ways that were meaningful to her, even though she was less visible on screens. Revival of a popular figure. Linda Carter regained her prominence in the 1990s and 2000s. Linda remained current by redefining herself for new audiences, while many of the celebrities of her time faded into the background. Viewers were reminded of her acting abilities by guest appearances on popular television programs such as Smallville and Law and Order. In a deft homage to her superhero heritage, her Smallville role as Moira Sullivan delighted devoted fans and introduced her to a younger audience. Linda didn't hide her origins as Wonder Woman. She leaned in instead. At fan gatherings and comic conventions, where her presentations felt more intimate than theatrical, she quickly gained popularity. Linda was more than just an autograph signer. She heard accounts from admirers who considered Wonder Woman to be an inspiration that changed their lives. These were not merely sentimental moments. They emphasized her enduring impact and intergenerational connections. Her role in Wonder Woman 1984 and 2017 solidified her status as an iconic figure. Director Patty Jenkins referred to Linda as a pioneer and acknowledged that she helped establish the foundation for contemporary superhero representations. It was more than just a tribute. It honored her contribution to the genre's development. Acting wasn't the only aspect of Linda's comeback. During this time, her singing career took off. She shared her passion for jazz and blues with fervent crowds at sold-out shows across the country. Her deep, soulful voice and artistic development were on full display on her 2018 album Red Rock and Blues. It demonstrated that Linda wasn't only rekindling old interests. She was getting the hang of them. It was more than just talent that kept her relevant. Linda's greatest strength was her genuineness. She maintained her evolution while embracing her background, finding a balance that appealed to both new and devoted followers. While newer viewers viewed her as a dynamic, multidimensional performer with the timeless charm of Linda Carter, longtime fans treasured her commitment to the Wonder Woman tradition. Linda Carter has always been an alluring combination of strength, attractiveness, and genuineness for men. She has been respected for decades because she exemplifies empowerment, talent, and resilience. Although her stint as Wonder Woman catapulted her into international fame, Linda refused to let that define her. Building on her heroic roots, she pursued campaigning, acting, and music. Linda demonstrated that she was more than a one-hit wonder by engaging with fans at events, playing a variety of roles, and enthralling audiences with her deep voice. She maintained her famous position while being relevant to her followers by combining attractiveness and approachability. She stands out for being genuine. Despite spending decades in the spotlight, her kind and courteous personality has remained constant, according to her admirers. She is a sentimental reminder of their youth for many who grew up seeing her as Wonder Woman. She serves as a reminder to younger audiences of a Hollywood where ability and personality were valued highly. Her advocacy work has only strengthened her enduring appeal, which stands in sharp contrast to today's ephemeral celebrity culture. Linda has made use of her position to match her beliefs in real life with the attributes she contributed to Wonder Woman. Her assertion that inner power is the source of true strength strikes a deep chord. She has forged an unshakable link with her fans thanks to her flawless fusion of on-screen bravery and off-screen genuineness. Linda Carter's charisma is still compelling today. She has the same vitality that first won over audiences in the 1970s, whether she's playing at sold-out shows, making appearances, or interacting with fans at conventions. Her charm comes naturally to her, a unique talent that cuts across time. Boomers dominated the remote, if you can call it that, back when TV antennae needed a good shake and a prayer to function. Classic TV was more than just a hobby, it was an entire personality, with laugh tracks louder than your dad's snoring and cliffhangers that had viewers actually screaming at their TVs. Can Gen Z, however, bear the tension of anticipating the next episode for an entire week? It's unlikely, spoiler alert. Kangaroo, Captain. Remember Captain Kangaroo and those early mornings? Naturally. How could you have forgotten? His soft, soothing voice was like a cozy hug. Is undoubtedly not a day of boredom and nothing to do. Today is a day to get out and go. Unlike what we have today, they welcome children into the day. It wasn't a loud, action-packed cartoon. Just nice conversations and easy, reassuring stories. Oh, and don't forget about Bunny Rabbit and Mr. Green Jeans. There was something about Captain Kangaroo that made you feel as though you were in the same room as him. And all the children realized it was time to unwind and let Captain take over. We might never again receive anything like that, let's face it. You'll want to whistle with nostalgia when you think of it, but not as much as this subsequent recollection. All of you are loved by me. You too. As well as you. As well as myself. The Whistling Theme Music by Andy Griffith. Music, that theme of whistling used to. Didn't it send chills down the spine? When it first began, you may imagine Opie and Andy strolling hand in hand along a dusty path. With fishing rods slung over their shoulders, they headed to a serene location beside the sea. In addition to being catchy, the song perfectly encapsulated the essence of the performance. Family, simplicity, and the coziness of small-town living. Even though it was humorous, it's difficult to forget. It immediately took you to a place where a nice conversation or a walk to the neighborhood cafe might resolve even the most difficult issues. It was like a promise that everything will be fine for the following half hour after you heard it. But not quite as good as watching your favorite cartoons on Saturday mornings. Cartoons on Saturday mornings. How did you find it? You alone with the TV and a large bowl of cereal. With that ancient sense of comedy, the Flintstones got things started. Barney and Fred got into trouble together like old pals. Next came Scooby-Doo, in which you and the gang worked together to solve mysteries while constantly speculating about the identity of the person hiding behind the mask. The Jetsons, too. That was a preview of the flying automobiles and robot assistants that we all assumed we would have by now. In any case, we might be getting close. However, watching cartoons wasn't the only thing that happened on those mornings. They were customary. No reruns or streaming. You only get to see your favorite characters once a week. It like a miniature getaway. And those times seem like they happened yesterday to every baby boomer. Dragnet's delivery was deadpan. Remember this now? Just the facts, ma'am, in that deadpan manner of Sergeant Joe Fridays. No nonsense, no fluff. He had no taste for ostentatious technology or extravagant behavior. He was all about maintaining composure, staying true to the facts, and letting the hints do the talking. For boomers, there was a certain refreshing quality to his unassuming ruggedness. Additionally, the slogan would always make you smile, as you are most likely doing at the moment. Certainly it was more than a phrase. Joe Friday was a man who solved the case, one fact at a time, and you knew precisely what you were getting. On Fantasy Island, Mr. Roar. Do you recall Ricardo Montalban's portrayal of Mr. Roar? Tattoo would shout out, the plane, at the beginning of each episode, announcing the arrival of fresh visitors and mysteries. It was thrilling. Mr. The perfect host, Roar was always composed, elegant, and just enigmatic enough to leave you wondering what he knew that nobody else did. Every visitor's journey was different, with hopes evolving into unanticipated lessons, and Roar was there to guide everything with that easy, sardonic smile. We were forced to reconsider our true desires by the enchantment of television. John Boy on the Waltons, Good Night. Music, who can forget the famous Waltons' Good Night John Boy? Originally a line, it evolved into a charming little custom. Every member of the family would say good night, and it always seemed so sincere. It gave you the impression that you were a member of their close-knit family, right there with them. It struck close to home for us boomers, didn't it? Gathering around the table for supper, discussing the highs and lows of the day, and then calming down together brought back memories of our own family rituals. Every good night was like a warm embrace, strengthening the ties of support and affection that we all value. Ultimately, the Waltons allowed us to see a world where family was really important. Using that one sentence to tuck John Boy in made us feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, as if they were tucking us in as well. Who wouldn't want to join that affectionate gang, really? Our memories are shaped by those small moments. The Saturday Night Live quote. Saturday Night Live is on. The Saturday night broadcast is live from New York. Saturday Night Live began with that famous line, which immediately set the tone for an entertaining evening. It was the quintessential weekend custom. You would assemble around the television, aware that something new and humorous was about to happen. The vibe was electric, and the program became a springboard for some of the biggest names in comedy, whether it was a hilarious skit or a spot-on parody. Who could forget the outrageous antics of the players who weren't prepared for prime time? They challenged conventions and addressed a wide range of topics, including pop culture and politics, while making us laugh and think. SNL was more than a program. It was a phenomena of culture. It changed our perception of comedy and made the news of the week accessible and humorous in our living rooms. Our lives became reliant on those late-night giggles. And the first line still evokes a wave of fond emotions now. Carol Burnett's amusing skits and costumes. Particularly with that iconic Dawn with the wind curtain rod outfit, she had us in stitches. Carol Burnett and her actors transformed family squabbles into comedic gold by bringing those characters to life in the family sketches in a way that seemed genuine and amusing. Only baby boomers recall that, along with Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, and Vicki Lawrence, the Carol Burnett Show was a must-watch. Each episode of the show felt like a masterwork of comedy. They let us laugh with them, broke character, and made each other laugh. Ultimately, it was not merely a show for laughs or a performance. We felt like we were a part of the fun somehow. Without a doubt, one of the real pleasures of TV comedy was her show. They are no longer made that way. Angels of Charlie. There was a period when 3 young females attended the police academy. Who could forget the recognizable feathered hair of Charlie's Angels? These women gave detective work a new dimension of elegance and ferocity. Kate Jackson, Jacqueline Smith, and Farrah Fawcett were doing more than just investigating murders. They were doing it with a great sense of style and confidence. Angels, Charlies, worked as a game share. The Angels broke the stereotype of what TV female characters might be since they were intelligent, attractive, and had a serious demeanor. They defeated the villains every week with style, cunning, and that iconic 70s flair. We all wished we could sport feathered hair as stylishly as they did, since they made every case seem like an adventure. The dynamic duo of Batman. Fans of Batman will undoubtedly recall the era of Adam West and Burt Ward. By fighting criminals in that outrageous way that was just plain entertaining, they transformed Gotham City into a campy, vibrant adventure. Splashes splattered across the screen with each boom and bam. We had never seen comic book action come to life like this before. Burt Ward's wide-eyed Robin and Adam West's straight-faced Batman made the ideal combination, providing us with equal parts laughs and thrills. You would discover that they did a fantastic job at embodying the characters if you read the comics. Watching them was perfect escape. One thing that can't be quickly forgotten is watching the dynamic duo defeat the villains with bizarre devices, cheesy quips, and a nod to the audience. And from Gunsmoke, Matt Dillon. Didn't he make the best Old West Marshal in Gunsmoke? His steady hand and serious sense of justice kept Dodge City in line each week. Dillon was the genuine deal to us baby boomers. Fair, tough, and always willing to fight against criminals no matter what. Dillon, portrayed by the renowned James Arnes, was no ordinary cowboy. He gave the part depth by portraying a lawman who was tough, kind, and devoted to his community. It was like entering the Old West when watching him on Gunsmoke, when right and wrong were obvious. Additionally, the hero was continually fighting to maintain Dodge City's tranquility. It was the epitome of vintage Western television. The duet between Edith and Archie Bunker. An incredible duet just before an episode airs has never been seen before. It was amazing to hear Archie and Edith Bunker's duet, Those Were the Days, which opened All in the Family. Edith's high-pitched warble and Archie's rough voice were a perfect match. However, that added to its allure. That music was more than just a theme, for everyone who knows. It takes us back to simpler days when everyone seemed to know their position in the world and life seemed less difficult. Each episode's mood would be established by the duet. Honest but playful. Just before Archie tackled the topic that was on his mind. Not every member of the family merely made us chuckle. It caused us to reflect. All the while keeping us rooted in the peculiar, flawed, yet oh-ho realistic family life of the bunker. Red Skeleton's members. Families everywhere were delighted by Skeleton's array of characters, which included the endearing idiot Clem Cattlehopper and the kind-hearted vagabond Freddy the Freeloader. He possessed a distinct talent for giving each character a sense of relatability and individuality, adding humor and warmth to every sketch. Skeleton's humor was clean, witty, and appropriate for all ages. He could make you laugh with only a glance or gesture. He was a comedic masterclass to watch. Additionally, those characters continue to evoke happy memories of family laughing for boomers. Wishing you a long and prosperous life aboard Star Trek. Have a long and prosperous life. We are immediately transported back in time by the Vulcan greeting and his well-known split-fingered salute. Spock's famous catchphrase was a heartfelt statement that exuded optimism and benevolence. Spock was far more than a fictional character to everyone who knew him. In a chaotic universe, he was the voice of reason. He demonstrated to us the need of reason and comprehension by navigating interplanetary disputes and philosophical conundrums with his cool head and collected manner. It seemed as though he was expressing a common desire for longevity and tranquility, not only for himself but for everyone, each time he said, "Live long and prosper." Thumbs up from the fans. Now, let's discuss the F from Happy Days. Always wearing his leather jacket and radiating charisma, he was the show's trendiest character. That recognizable thumbs up is his distinctive move. It seemed as though a tremendous thing was about to happen whenever he made that motion. You could tell he was going to do something amazing when you saw him snap his fingers. The fans' self-assurance and coolness were like the spirit of the 1970s, making him a cherished icon of that time period, whether it was saving the day or attracting the attention of his crush, Pinky Tuscadero. The scene in Lucy's Chocolate Factory. Everyone recalls this funny gem of a time. After Lucy and her closest friend Ethel start working at a chocolate factory, things rapidly go out of hand. A chocolate-filled conveyor belt started moving more quickly than they could keep up with. They wind up putting chocolates in their mouths, their aprons, and any other available space as they attempt to wrap each piece. The physical humor and mayhem are just invaluable. This moment is pure comic gold because of their desperate attempts to keep up and the ridiculous circumstances they find themselves in. This scene exemplifies Lucy's propensity for mischief and Ethel's readiness to partake in her escapades. Their timing and chemistry have had a profound effect on television history, serving as a reminder of the wonder that emerges when two outstanding performances are given by gifted actresses. It still makes us chuckle now and perfectly encapsulates the spirit of vintage television humor. The family theme song from the Brady Bunch. This is the tale. Don't you recognize that theme song? You can't help but smile and possibly even join in on the singing every time it begins. This blended family, which brought together two families with children from various origins, was introduced to us through the catchy opening. The song gave us a great overview of family life and taught us that it doesn't always have to be conventional to be amazing. We are introduced to Mike, Carol, and their 6 children, who all reside in the same house, as the catchy song plays. It emphasizes the joy and mayhem of a large family as everyone learns to love one another, get along, and experience the highs and lows of life. That theme song serves as a sentimental reminder of the value of family, despite its unusual nature. Every time we watched the Jetsons' futuristic family, it made us feel like we were a part of the Brady family and set the stage for innumerable unforgettable episodes. Would you like to return to the Jetson? This animated series offered us an entertaining and thrilling glimpse into the future. Additionally, it gave boomers a glimpse of what life would be like in a technologically advanced society. We were introduced to a world of flying automobiles, space-age technology, and other futuristic innovations by the Jetson family, George, Jane, Judy, Elroy, and their adorable robot maid, Rosie. Imagine speeding around in a vehicle that flies rather than drives. Additionally, the robot Rosie was ahead of her time, using her clever personality and effective abilities to make home chores a breeze. However, the Jetsons' ability to combine humor with optimism about the potential of technology was what made them so unforgettable. It sparked fantasies of living a high-tech lifestyle, leading us to question whether flying cars and smart homes would actually become a reality in the future. We can't help but remember that hopeful future the Jetsons envisioned for us, even when we witness technological breakthroughs now. It served as a light-hearted reminder that even though we may not yet be living in a flying car, innovation is constantly present. The nose of Bewitched wiggles. That small gesture turned become one of the most recognizable ones in television history. You could tell that something extraordinary was going to happen whenever Samantha, who was portrayed by the endearing Elizabeth Montgomery, wiggled her nose. Both young and old viewers were captivated by its flawless fusion of charm and whimsy. An untidy problem was resolved with a simple wiggle and poof. Either some chaos was turned into order, or a delicious feast was served. We wished we could have that type of power in our daily lives after seeing. Imagine having the ability to use our noses to make tasks vanish or to transform a routine day into an exciting adventure. The eerie narration of The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone. Each episode began with Rod Serling's ominous voice, which was the ideal way to introduce the surreal tales that followed. Almost a shiver went down your spine as he presented us to the odd and unexpected. Serling had a remarkable talent for engrossing us in fantasy worlds that subverted our understanding of reality. Every time the plot changed, we were left wondering what was real and what wasn't. We were riveted to our screens, wondering what strange situation we would see next, because of the suspense and fascination his narration provided. With Roy Rogers, Happy Trails. Let's get back on our feet and remember Roy Rogers, the iconic cowboy who brought the Wild West into our homes. Roy was the cowboy hero, accompanied by his faithful horse, Trigger, and for boomers, he was like entering a great adventure. There were musical performances, exciting adventures, and a strong sense of justice in every episode. Happy Trails, one of Roy's signature songs, had more than just a pleasant melody. They turned into songs about adventure and friendship. Every episode felt like a happy celebration of cowboy life because of his ability to ride Trigger with ease, pluck a guitar, and belt out a song. Many people hold on to their childhood memories of Saturday afternoons spent watching Roy Rogers, which arouse feelings of nostalgia for a time when the Wild West was still very much a part of our fantasies. The theme tune for Mazzy. The show's distinctive fusion of humor and poignant moments was encapsulated in that ethereally lovely melody. The song's lyrics were profoundly contemplative, touching on the intricacies of life, loss, and the realities of war, despite the fact that the series was a comedy set during the Korean War. That title music served as a warning to relax and get ready for an episode that can make us laugh 1 minute and cry the next. The musical exploits of the Partridge Family. Music, pleasure, and family were the main themes of this show. As we boomers followed the family on their musical road travels, it won our hearts. Each episode was an adventure. The charming songs they sang, including I Think I Love You, were not only hits on the show but also became real-world chart-topping anthems that made us want to sing along, whether they were singing at a local venue or traveling through the highs and lows of family life in their colorful bus. Their music had an irresistible vitality that made it impossible to avoid getting swept up in it. The Love Boats. Fun and romance. This show was the ideal getaway for boomers, enabling us to fantasize about sunny getaways and the excitement of forming new connections. We followed a variety of passengers as the ship sailed across the ocean, each with their own romantic tales to tell. And difficulties. The Love Boat never failed to provide endearing stories of unexpected meetings, rekindling past passions, or navigating the highs and lows of romance. The overwhelming charm of the show was further enhanced by the delightful crew, led by Captain Steubing, who constantly made sure that love was in the air. Each episode seemed like a lovely vacation because to the vibrant locations, entertaining musical performances, and special guests. The Family of the Cosby Show. Under the direction of Cliff and Claire Huxtable, this program masterfully captured realistic family moments that many of us, whether we were parents, children, or somewhere in between, could identify with. The Huxtable family's interactions were genuine and endearing. Viewers found resonance in the show's celebration of love, education, and the highs and lows of parenting, from the light-hearted banter between Cliff and Claire to the life lessons they shared with their 5 kids. We were reminded that family life is full of joy and hardships by witnessing anything from sibling rivalry to sincere chats at the dinner table. Pioneer life in Little House on the Prairie. It was more than simply amusement to watch the Engels family survive on the prairie. It served as a lovely reminder of the value of family values and resiliency. Each episode, which was set in the late 1800s, showed us the hardships and victories of pioneer life, from farming and home construction to enduring severe winters and communal conflicts. The gentle teachings of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. For all of us baby boomers, Fred Rogers' gentle approach to teaching children had a lasting influence. He was like a warm hug on TV. Every program was more than a mere performance. It was a secure environment where kids could pick up valuable life lessons about acceptance, generosity, and emotional intelligence. Each child felt seen and heard thanks to Fred's special style of speaking directly to his little audience. With such grace and care, he introduced us to new people, explored fantastical worlds, and talked about emotions like sadness and wrath. The distinct humor of the Bob Newhart Show. The Bob Newhart Show was unique because of its witty prose and approach to the peculiarities of human nature. In each episode, Bob would coolly handle the frequently ridiculous problems his patients brought up in what felt like a humorous therapy session. Bob's deadpan delivery and reactions added levels of humor that kept viewers laughing, whether it was from neurotic clients or wonderfully strange scenarios. To what extent are you familiar with vintage Hollywood movies? Certain truths are well known, while others the makers attempted, but were unable, to conceal. These unexpected facts about old films, which range from color manipulation to horrible film errors, are strangely fascinating. Gone with the Wind's curtains. Do you recall the iconic green curtains that Scarlett O'Hara wore in Gone with the Wind? Those drapes weren't even green, as it turns out. Green was not properly captured by the Technicolor process while Gone with the Wind was being filmed. On TV, it appeared odd or bleached out. Therefore, the costume designers used gray fabric instead of green. It may sound absurd, yet without any technological problems, that gray created the appearance of a deep green on film. Most folks aren't even aware of this ingenious cinematic ploy. However, it completely influenced how that famous scene looked. However, in regards to, you'd be surprised to learn what the legendary Alfred Hitchcock has to offer in these memorable sequences. Describe his preferred look. The cameo that Alfred Hitchcock loved the most. If you know anything about Hitchcock, you know that he was renowned for his cameos in addition to being a master filmmaker. He would briefly appear in almost all of his films, either reading a newspaper, walking a dog, or simply blending in with the throng. Here's the twist, though. Not even his own cameo was his favorite. Rather, Hitchcock asserted that he was more impressed by Cary Grant's walk in North by Northwest 1959 than by anything he had accomplished himself. He found Grant's movements in the movie to be quite Hitchcockian. The enigmatic, almost unnerving atmosphere that Hitchcock loved to create was somehow recreated by Grant. Without the filmmaker ever appearing on screen, Grant's stride seems to have turned into a cameo for Hitchcock's entire aesthetic. It seems that some films are so amazing that the actors, like Bela Lugosi in his cape, desire to carry a bit home. Did you know that Bella couldn't seem to get Dracula off the screen? Lugosi was so devoted to the vampire after playing the renowned part that he wore his Dracula costume almost everywhere. Wearing that same black cloak, he would appear to events, parties, and even his own house as though he were still acting like himself. When he died, he even asked to be buried in his cape since he was that attached to the role. Did you know that a lot of things are altered in other films to create iconic visuals like the one below? The slippers from Wizard of Oz. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's ruby slippers weren't originally supposed to be red. Her shoes were actually silver in L. Frank Ball's original novel. However, MGM discovered they could use the new Technicolor technology to make the graphics stand out when they began working on the movie. On film, red was more striking than silver. They therefore took a risk by changing Dorothy's shoes to ruby red. A straightforward color change produced one of the most recognizable props in film history. In the history of Hollywood, on-screen romances were frequently authentic. Except for these two. Clark Gable gets kissed by Vivien Leigh. The passion between the two on-screen lovers was obvious to the audience, but the truth is a little more startling. Vivien Leigh wasn't really excited about their kissing sequences, despite the fact that she appeared to be captivated with Clark Gable and Gone with the Wind behind the scenes. According to reports, she even mentioned that Gable's breath was very awful. His dentures are the reason for this. You know, Leigh didn't really enjoy those amorous times because Gable had dental problems and wore fake teeth. Do you recall how they edit films to provide carefully chosen content? This following one, however, is the best. The classic white dress worn by Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's famous white garment wasn't truly white during the 7-year itch. Although it appears flawlessly white on screen, the filmmakers had to overcome the constraints of the cameras and lighting available at the time. They decided on a somewhat cream-colored fabric since pure white would have been too harsh and overexposed. In this manner, the dress would still have that timeless, stunning impact on TV without being overly washed out under the harsh studio lighting. Although it's a minor element, it played a significant role in producing that scene that will never be forgotten. Speaking of memorable sequences, this next actor appeared to be incredibly forgetful while filming. Marlon Brando had trouble remembering lines. Marlon Brando made a notable usage of cards, which were concealed across the set of The Godfather. The actor even had his lines taped to his forehead in certain moments so he could read them while staring at them. Brando felt that his performance felt more natural and impromptu since he didn't memorize his lines. By using a humorous technique, he was able to evoke the enduring persona of Vito Corleone without depending on his recollection. How do you remember the movie My Fair Lady? Most likely the incredible vocals. Your bubble would be popped by this. My Fair Lady, singing. Although Audrey Hepburn played the role of Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, 1964, her voice wasn't the same as her appearance. Marn Nixon, a gifted vocalist who frequently worked behind the scenes for Hollywood celebrities, dubbed the majority of the vocals. Despite Hepburn's diligent efforts and months of song preparation, the studio eventually determined Nixon's voice was more appropriate for the part. Hepburn was disappointed, but she gave acting her all, and the two of them produced a performance that is still cherished today. For some movies, the performance seems phony, but this sequence elevated realism to a new level. The Godfather scene with the horse's head. In this terrifying scenario, Jack Waltz, a Hollywood producer, awakens to see the severed head of his beloved racehorse in his bed as a mafia warning. In that scene, the majority of people might have deduced that the horse's head was a fake. But it wasn't phony, despite popular belief. It was authentic. They purchased an actual horse's head from a dog food firm to utilize in the project. The head was so convincing that actor John Marley, who portrayed the character who received it in his bed, was truly appalled. The staff made sure the head was fresh and lifelike. Since it was a real horse's head, the already startling scene is made even more unnerving. When fans find out about it, the piano in Casablanca is even more terrifying. As time passes, do you recall the piano where Sam plays? It wasn't just any prop, either. It has nearly achieved the same level of fame as the film. Here's the problem, though. In the movie, more than one piano was used. The well-known piano that Sam plays in Rick's Cafe has actually sold several times over the years and is frequently referred to as the Sol Casablanca piano. But in reality, multiple pianos were used for the movie, and the one that was eventually sold at auction wasn't even the original. It's an interesting tidbit that gives the history of the movie a hint of mystery. How many actual pianos were there in the film? Hopefully, no one took any, which is better than the props in the upcoming film. The 10 Commandments were stolen by Charlton H. Well known for his. Despite his impressive performances in movies such as The 10 Commandments, 1956, Charlton H. was unable to resist bringing home a piece of the action. In fact, he kept one of the tablets of the 10 Commandments as a memento after the shoot. The tablet became kind of a personal memento, and H., who portrayed Moses in the epic movie, apparently relished the idea of preserving a relic from such a famous picture. However, private mementos can occasionally turn into public ones. For example, the actor's 1955 performance became nearly as famous as he was. Here's the twist, though. The jacket wasn't merely stored in the costume department after the movie was finished. It was utilized again in subsequent 1950s and 1960s teen films. The jacket appeared in a number of movies and became a sort of recycled icon of rebellious youth since the studios loved the concept of reusing such a familiar piece of apparel to save money. The recycling of an item is one thing. For our entertainment, this actor's visage was altered and reused. The composition of Frankenstein. One of the scariest characters in movie history is Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, created in 1931. The makeup's creation process, however, is even more terrifying. Karloff's transformation into the monster required hours of cosmetic application. In addition to taking a lot of time, it was also very uncomfortable. Carlo had to be sewed into his costume every day, and the renowned flat top head was constructed from layers of rubber and plaster. He frequently passed out from tiredness from the heavy, tight makeup and outfit, and the delicate makeup made it impossible for him to even drink water while filming. Karloff's commitment to the part made the character memorable despite the difficult process. Actors are not the only people that are dedicated these days. Some producers and directors are equally talented and inventive. Psycho's scene in the shower. Alfred Hitchcock created one of the most recognizable moments in horror history with Psycho 1960. The scenario in the shower that turned violent. However, the blood depicted in that scenario isn't blood at all. Hitchcock used Hershey's chocolate syrup for the black and white film. The syrup's deep, black hue appeared convincing on camera, and it had the ideal consistency to resemble blood. It's difficult to see the iconic shower scene now without considering the sweet component that contributed to such a terrible moment because of this ingenious little ploy. Everyone could see the Ingrid net of this next actress's attractiveness. The famous legs of Beta Graybell. She was aware of the value of her legs, which were her distinguishing characteristic. She actually had a staggering $1 million in insurance for them. A step that, at the time, was all but unprecedented. One of the most well-known celebrities of the 1940s, Graybell was known for her legs, which were frequently featured in her pin-up pictures and movies. Although it was a PR gimmick, the insurance policy helped establish her as one of the most marketable celebrities in Hollywood. Some films, whether or not they are well known, can make the worst mistakes, like this one. Ben-Hur and the Chariot Race. Seeing terrible film errors in a renowned movie is truly astounding, and Ben-Hur is no exception. The movie has a well-known chariot race, which is still regarded as one of the most exciting sequences in cinematic history. The fascinating thing, though, is that throughout the race, a stray Coca-Cola bottle can be seen in the backdrop. Fans of the movie have found this error to be an interesting piece of trivia. A contemporary bottle entered the set, most likely undetected throughout production, despite the epic scope and historical context of the film. It serves as a humorous reminder that errors can occasionally occur in even the most solemn and opulent movies. Actors slipped into slumber in the following one after making slip-ups. Wands of Oz flying monkey masks. The recognizable flying monkeys were more than just a spooky aspect of the Wizard of Oz fantasy world. In the actual world, they had a rather frightening detail. Many of the performers would pass out while filming because the masks they wore to play the flying monkeys were so hot and uncomfortable. Because they were having trouble breathing and couldn't see through the masks, some of the actors even needed assistance leaving the set. Even though they were uncomfortable, those flying monkeys ended up being one of the scariest scenes in the movie, which enhanced the spooky mood of the evil witch's army. Jaws' phony shark. Bruce, the movie's famous shark, wasn't exactly the most adept operator. During production, the mechanical shark kept breaking down, which frustrated director Steven Spielberg and his team. The shark actually malfunctioned so frequently that Spielberg had to come up with a new solution. He created tension with sound and suspense rather than displaying the shark all the time, making the viewers fear it before they even saw it. This choice proved to be one of the movie's strongest points and contributed to Jaws becoming the exciting classic that it is today. In Hollywood, a mistake can occasionally result in something even better. The roar of King Kong. Despite what many people think, a lion did not make the fearsome scream of King Kong in the 1933 movie King Kong. Rather, the recognizable sound was a blend of other animal sounds. To make it sound even more ominous, the filmmakers blended the roars of an elephant, tiger, and lion with a hint of a hawk's cry. The end effect was a distinctive and memorable roar that contributed to King Kong's reputation as one of the most terrifying monsters in movies. It's a brilliant illustration of how sound design can combine various components to produce something more than life-sized. Godfather's stray cat. The famous opening scene, in which Marlon Brando clutches a cat, was not even in the script. During filming, a stray happened to come into the scene. Brando chose to take it up and incorporate it into the action since he was an improviser. Vito Corleone was given an unanticipated sense of control and peace by the cat's serene and unperturbed manner, which provided a startling contrast to the stressful dramatic scene. It's a fantastic illustration of how spontaneity can elevate a situation and transform an impromptu moment into a memorable one. Titanic set in A Night to Remember. The terrible sinking of the Titanic is portrayed in the 1958 film A Night to Remember. The look of the ill-fated ship was created by the filmmakers using a real-life ocean liner. Naturally, the ship in question was not the Titanic, but rather the RMS Caronia, a ship that was strikingly similar to the Titanic in size and look. The depiction of the ship in the movie feels incredibly realistic because the filmmakers even used actual footage of the Caronia for a few sequences. Even though the Caronia wasn't the Titanic, it nevertheless gave the narrative a realistic feel that raised its level of seriousness. The choice to include actual ship footage, which captured the majesty of ocean liners in that era, contributed to the film's increased impact. It's an excellent illustration of how, even before the era of computer-generated imagery and contemporary special effects, filmmakers from earlier decades employed workable methods to produce breathtaking sights and engross people in the narrative. Concealed message in the back window. You'll notice something interesting if you look closely at the windows of the building across from James Stewart's apartment in Rear Window, 1954. A placard stating that Hitchcock was present is present. It's a small, unspoken Easter egg in one of Alfred Hitchcock's light-hearted methods of making his mark on the movie. Hitchcock, who is well known for his love of cameos and small details, added this cunning trademark to the set as a playful, unique touch. And for those who notice it, it's just one of those small details that adds to the enjoyment of watching his films. Tiffany's cat in Breakfast. The fact that Holly Golightly's cat in the film has no name is actually rather appropriate given her persona. Throughout the movie, Audrey Hepburn's character only refers to it as cat. It's just one of those minor details that reveal a lot about Holly. She is an erratic, free-spirited woman who dislikes being bound by anything. And naming the cat appropriately is part of that. The unidentified cat, in a sense, represents her own loneliness. Despite being constantly surrounded by people, Holly, like the cat, is emotionally aloof. It's a modest yet impactful gesture that deepens our understanding of Holly's personality. Additionally, the cat has grown to be as iconic as Hepburn's version of the character over time. It's amusing how a seemingly insignificant feature can make such an impact. White Betty in The Proposal. If you recall her appearance in The Proposal, you might be surprised to hear that it wasn't originally intended. Her job wasn't even intended for her at first. Another actress was supposed to play the role. However, the filmmakers knew Betty White would be ideal for the part after seeing her in another movie. The decision proved to be a great one, and they made it swiftly. One of her most notable comedy moments in contemporary Hollywood was her appearance in The Proposal. She transformed what may have been a minor role into one of the film's most memorable scenes by adding her trademark charm and comedy. It's an excellent illustration of how the ideal candidate for a position might occasionally be discovered by chance. Additionally, it provided viewers with yet another opportunity to adore Betty's renowned comedic timing. The outfit from Vertigo. Kim Novak's famous green outfit from Vertigo, 1958, wasn't a haphazard costume. In fact, it was made especially for her. Alfred Hitchcock, who is renowned for paying close attention to details, had very particular expectations for the dress appearance. He even demanded a certain shade of green, one that would go well with the spooky, enigmatic tone of the movie. One of the most important scenes in the film, when Judy, played by Novak, changes drastically, includes this clothing. The color green itself serves as a symbol, mirroring the film's recurring themes of addiction and the paranormal. It's a prime illustration of Hitchcock's mastery at utilizing every little element, from colors to clothes, to heighten the mood and advance the plot. White Christmas with fake snow. In the well-known White Christmas number, the snow was not real. Rather, it was created using a blend of soap flakes and additional elements that were intended to resemble snow on screen. The filmmakers needed to think beyond the box. Given the harsh studio lighting, actual snow would not be suitable for interior filming. But there was a small issue with the fake snow. Because it was so light, it frequently became lodged in the clothing of the actors. The performers would need to be dusted off to remove the snow that stuck to them in between takes. It's a minor behind-the-scenes detail, but it demonstrates how there are frequently unforeseen difficulties in getting anything to look flawless on camera. In Wizard of Oz, the dog paid actor. Here is a fascinating movie fact. In actuality, the dog portraying Toto received a higher salary than the Munchkin actors. The Munchkin players received a weekly salary of $50, while Toto, the cute terrier, received $125 for his performance. It's one of those peculiarities in movie history that shows how animal stars were occasionally given better treatment than actors. Even while it might appear odd now, it was a reflection of Hollywood's perception of animals as important production elements. Furthermore, Toto played a rather important part in the movie, so perhaps it makes sense that he get a bit extra. King Kong Skull Island. Although it may have appeared to be a genuine exotic setting, the lush, enigmatic Skull Island in King Kong, 1933, was actually a set. A sound stage was used to film the jungle sequences, replete with painted backdrops and meticulously constructed sets that created the appearance of a huge, wild island. One of the earliest instances of cinematic magic, it demonstrates how filmmakers might construct vast and engrossing universes without the use of real-world settings. The way the island was portrayed made King Kong one of the most famous movies of its era, despite the fact that it wasn't genuine. The children's set. In a single day, Charlie Chaplin constructed the orphanage's famous set. Chaplin and his team put in a lot of overtime to bring things together as soon as possible. The outcome was one of the most cherished and unforgettable settings in silent film history, despite the haste. In order to convey the emotional depth and sense of struggle that Chaplin's character and the young kid went through, the set became an extremely important component of the movie. It's a fantastic illustration of how Chaplin's commitment and ingenuity, despite working under pressure, had a long-lasting effect on filmmaking. The amazing fashion sense of Betty in All About Eve. In reality, some of the clothing worn by Bette Davis's character Margot Channing was taken from Davis's own personal clothing. Her distinct and sophisticated style so captivated costume designer William Trela that he chose to use her actual clothing in the movie. This enhanced the realism and nuance of Margot's persona, just as the attire felt more in line with her personal identity. It's an intriguing detail that demonstrates how Davis's personal style influenced the part and helped establish Margot Channing as one of the most recognizable figures in vintage Hollywood. Actress Audrey Hepburn was more than that. In a world full of icons, she was a sensation. She was unique, captivating guys of all ages in a manner that no one else could. Although she wasn't the most outspoken or audacious, she made a bigger impression than others. Why, therefore, did she win so many people over? And why, decades later, is she still so attractive? The classic beauty. The reason Audrey Hepburn will always be remembered is because of her unique beauty. Audrey was distinct from the majority of the leading ladies of her era, who were all about theatrical appearances, striking curves, and that bombshell aura. She had a gentle, sensitive beauty that was somehow even more alluring. Let's start by discussing those eyes. There was a reason they were referred to as doe eyes. They were large, warm, and almond-shaped. As if you could gaze into them and simultaneously see curiosity, friendliness, and a hint of mystery. They were more than just attractive. They said it all. Without a single word from her, there was charm, joy, and sadness. Then there was her neck, a feature that probably doesn't get much attention from most of us. Audrey had a majestic, regal appearance because of her long, exquisite neck, which was almost swan-like. She didn't even have to strive to look poised and sophisticated because of that particular element. And there was that smile, of course. Audrey had a wonderful smile. It was the ideal balance of humor and refinement. It was not ostentatious or ostentatious. Though modest, it brightened every space she entered. Even if you were only watching her on a screen, her smile was one of the few that could give you the impression that you knew her. But what truly made her stand out was how different she looked from the then-standard Hollywood appearance. Bold, curvaceous women like Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe were popular at the time. Audrey defied the stereotype with her subtle beauty and thin, nearly ballet-like physique. To stand out, she didn't have to be loud. She exuded simplicity and elegance. She demonstrated that being beautiful didn't always require shouting for attention. The subtle, distinctive features can sometimes leave the greatest impact. Audrey's form was incredibly elegant, graceful, lively, and almost ballerina-like. Curves weren't necessary for her to command attention. No exaggerated features could overpower her presence and composure. Whether wearing a basic black dress or capri pants and flats, she exuded an air of effortless refinement that made her look stylish in anything she wore. At a time while glamour regularly felt over the top, Audrey's fashion was diffused, clean, and undying. She made much less experience like a lot greater. Her splendor wasn't just in her determine. It was in her complete method to how she offered herself. She did not depend on heavy makeup or flashy fashion to turn heads. As an alternative, Audrey celebrated simplicity, and in some way that made her even greater magnetic. Her short pixie haircut, a bold desire for the generation, and minimalist makeup highlighted her natural capabilities. The one's doe eyes, excessive cheekbones, and that unforgettable smile. She proved that self-assurance and elegance may want to outshine even the boldest peers. But what sincerely set Audrey apart changed into the way her splendor pondered her character. Even as other actresses leaned into sultry, dramatic personas, Audrey radiated kindness, appeal, and heat. She failed to try and be everybody however herself. In a global passionate about loudness and curves, Audrey showed that subtlety, grace, and individuality should steal the highlight. Audrey wasn't just special for the sake of being special. She became a new preferred of splendor. She proved that you do not want to inshape a mildew to be unforgettable. Occasionally being yourself is the most beautiful factor of all. Her incomparable beauty. While different stars relied on extravagance to make an announcement, Audrey proved that genuine style doesn't want to shout. It turned into her quiet self-belief, her herbal poise, and her love for simplicity that redefined what it intended to be chic. Her fashion experience became iconic yet so refreshingly simple. Think about that little black get-dressed in breakfast at Tiffany's. It had become the blueprint for undying beauty. Audrey knew how to show fundamental pieces like capri pants, ballet apartments, and tailored shirts into something high quality. She failed to follow trends, she created them. And the quality part, her style felt handy. Women everywhere ought to observe Audrey and suppose, I'm able to do this, too. There was no want for over-the-top gowns or flashy earrings. Audrey ought to make a couple of residences' appearance simply as glamorous as a pair of heels. Her signature add-ons like outsized sunshades and pearl earrings were the perfect completion. Classic, understated, and forever in fashion. But Audrey's beauty wasn't pretty much garments. It changed into how she carried herself. With a historical past in ballet, she moved with the form of grace that appeared nearly otherworldly. Whether or not she was strolling right into a room, dancing on display, or truly sitting down, every motion had a dancer's fluidity. She by no means seemed hurried or awkward. Her poise was natural, like it turned into built into her very DNA. Even when she wasn't attempting, Audrey stood out. There has been something magnetic about the manner she mixed simplicity with sophistication. She will be surrounded by the flashiest stars in Hollywood. But, all eyes might necessarily turn to her. She did not want sequins or loud colorations to shine. Her quiet confidence did that for her. And that's the magic of Audrey Hepburn. Her elegance wasn't something she put on. It became something she became. Her fashion, her poise, and her handy grace had been a reflection of the beauty she carried on the interior. Simple, undying, and unforgettable. The soul of an angel. What virtually set her aside became the form of person she became at the inner. She had this warmth and real kindness that regarded to radiate from her. Men weren't just attracted to her looks. They favored the way she carried herself, how she handled others, and the compassion that shined via in the entirety she did. First off, Audrey became humble. Considerate. Here turned into someone who became one of the most well-known women inside the world. But, she didn't let it visit her head. Despite all the awards, adoration, and paparazzi, she stayed grounded. Audrey wasn't the kind to boast or flaunt her achievement. Rather, she became soft-spoken and approachable. There's this tale about how she once apologized to her co-big name William Holden for feeling anxious for the duration of a scene. It's not the form of thing you assume from a worldwide icon, but that is who she became. Her compassion turned into simply as astounding. Audrey failed to simply talk about caring for others. She lived it. After stepping lower back from Hollywood, she dedicated a whole lot of her lifestyles to running with UNICEF, traveling to a number of the world's most tough locations to help kids in want. She wasn't just lending her call to a motive. She turned into at the ground assembly human beings, listening to their tales, and doing everything she could to make a distinction. You could tell it wasn't for show. She sincerely cared. That type of empathy made her beauty even extra notable. Then there is how her co-stars and friends described her. People always communicate about her thoughtfulness. For example, on set, she'd recollect small details about humans, like what their favorite snack became or in the event that they had a sick family member, and make a point to test in on them. She had this manner of creating all of us around her experience unique and visible, whether or not they have been a big-name director or a production assistant. However, what made her most fascinating was her quiet confidence. Audrey did not need to call for attention or dominate a room. She just evidently drew human beings in together with her calm, graceful presence. It is that type of confidence it is magnetic. It makes you need to recognize her, be close to her, and research from her. All of those characteristics, her humility, compassion, thoughtfulness, and quiet self-belief, made Audrey a lot greater than a quiet face. She became an extraordinary kind of lovely, the sort that left an impact lengthy after she left the room. Audrey and her sharp wit. Men favored her no longer simplest for her beauty, however also for a way effortlessly she mixed intelligence and humor. She wasn't simply someone you desired to take a look at. She became a person you clearly desired to concentrate to. Audrey had this herbal capability to maintain a verbal exchange that felt both significant and attractive. She wasn't one to dominate a room with loudness, however when she spoke, humans paid interest. She had a way of expressing herself that changed into considerate and eloquent but absolutely approachable. Whether discussing artwork, lifestyles, or even cracking a light-hearted shaggy dog story, she made everyone feel relaxed. She wasn't pretentious or overbearing, simply results easily captivating. Her humor, too, turned into a big part of her attraction. Audrey had this playful, almost cheeky sense of humor that made her even more magnetic. It wasn't pressured or over the pinnacle. It turned into subtle and perfectly timed. The form of humor that left you smiling and trying to listen more. You may see glimpses of it in her interviews and even in her movies. There may be a twinkle in her eye. A lightness to her character that made her so relatable. What honestly set her aside changed into how she balanced everything so gracefully. Audrey changed into robust and intelligent, however never intimidating. She can be fashionable and sophisticated, but still approachable and warm. It's that rare mixture of qualities, being polished without being remote, that made her so captivating. For many guys, it wasn't simply her beauty or grace that drew them in. It turned into how she made them feel. She could make everyone experience like the most important character in the room. Not with the aid of attempting to electrify them, but clearly through being herself. Audrey changed into evidence that intelligence, wit, and kindness are simply as captivating as physical splendor. In reality, they're what made her unforgettable. Her notable voice. Audrey Hepburn's voice changed into natural magic, soft, melodic, and completely unforgettable. It wasn't the sort of voice that boomed or demanded attention. Alternatively, it drew you in, mild and soothing, like a heat breeze on a quiet afternoon. Her tone carried a natural refinement that felt flawlessly in sync together with her graceful personality. What made her voice so special was its precise mixture of calmness and appeal. It wasn't loud or overpowering, however it had this quiet strength that made each phrase she said sense significant. Whether she became handing over strains in a movie or speaking in an interview, there has been something enchanting approximately the way she spoke. It felt like she was sharing a touch piece of herself with every phrase cautiously chosen and introduced with care. For men, this voice changed into fascinating because it matched everything else about her. Audrey wasn't about flash or excess. She became about subtlety, elegance, and beauty. Her voice carried the one's equal features, wrapping her words in a kind of melodic calmness that turned into not possible to disregard. It became the type of voice you could consider listening to in a dream, gentle yet commanding your full interest. And it wasn't just the tone, it was the way she used it. Audrey's voice had a warmth that made you feel right away comfortable, like she was speaking at once to you, even supposing it was via a film screen. She ought to make even the only terms sound poetic, including layers of that means along with her sensitive transport. Her voice was more than simply another a part of her appeal. It changed into an extension of who she became. It reflected her elegance, her thoughtfulness, and her potential to captivate without ever trying too tough. Men had been attracted to it as it wasn't just high quality to concentrate to. It became a voice that lingered, staying with you lengthy after the communication changed into over. Her feel of favor because the celebrity that she was, Audrey did not just wear garments, she owned them. She wasn't approximately following traits, she set them. Her style turned into all approximately simplicity, but by some means she made it unforgettable. Take that iconic black get dressed in breakfast at Tiffany's. On everybody else, it might have simply been a nice get dressed, but on Audrey, it became an image of undying beauty. It wasn't flashy or over the top, but the way she carried herself made it mythical, and it wasn't just on the huge display. Off Digicam, her fashion became just as chic. She turned into a huge fan of smooth, tailor-made strains and traditional silhouettes. Not anything too fussy or loud. The one cigarette pants and ballet. Residences she loved, absolute genius. They have been comfortable, practical, and yet they regarded impossibly fashionable because Audrey wore them with such self-assurance. What in reality made her style special, although, become how accessible it felt. She wasn't dripping in jewels or drowning in layers of cloth. Her outfits have been easy and stylish, and it made humans experience like they might strive it, too. A little black dress, a crisp white blouse, or a couple of residences. It turned into all approximately the manner she positioned it collectively. Effortlessly chic without trying too hard. Audrey's style wasn't just about the clothes, although it became how she wore them. She carried herself with so much poise and charm that the whole thing regarded proper on her. Whether she turned into glammed up for a most useful or casually strolling through Paris, she continually appeared like she just belonged. And that's what set her apart. She proved that fashion isn't always about showing off. It is about understanding who you're and letting that shine via her humorousness. Hepburn had this low-key, playful sense of humor that made her even more endearing. She wasn't the form of character cracking loud jokes or trying too difficult to be funny. As an alternative, her humor was light, brief, and complete of charm. It became the form of humor that made human beings immediately like her. Take for example a number of her interviews. She had this self-deprecating way of speaking approximately herself that changed into each funny and completely disarming. As soon as while a person asked her approximately her iconic fashion, she joked that she was just too lazy to wear something complex. It turned into this type of easy line, but it gave all of us a glimpse of the way down to earth she was, and it made humans laugh because she became Audrey Hepburn. The concept of her being lazy about style became hilariously not possible. She also cherished to poke fun at herself, mainly whilst it came to her looks. Notwithstanding being one of the most stunning ladies within the world, she often joked about her large FT or how skinny she become. It wasn't in a negative way. It become in that I do not take myself too severely sort of way that made people sense cozy around her. Even on set, she had this playful electricity that saved things mild. For the duration of the filming of My Fair Female, as an example, she become acknowledged to goof round while the cameras were not rolling, making funny faces, or joking with the team. She did not walk around acting like a diva, even though she effortlessly may want to have. As a substitute, she brought this approachable humor to everything she did, which made people love her even greater. After which there's her comedic timing in movies. Audrey's humor virtually shined in roles like Roman Excursion and Sabrina. She had this subtle, witty delivery that could make even a simple line experience smart. In Roman Vacation, whilst she tries to combo in as an everyday traveler, her awkward attempts are both hilarious and absolutely charming. Audrey's humor wasn't just about getting laughs. It became approximately making people experience secure. She had this magical ability to be fashionable and humorous on the identical time, which is no easy feat. It's part of what made her so adorable. She changed into appropriate and talented, but she failed to take herself too seriously. She knew the way to giggle, mainly at herself, and that made her all of the more irresistible. She had an internal strength. Underneath that delicate look changed into someone who were through a few serious struggles and nevertheless came out on top, complete of kindness and electricity. During World Warfare II, Audrey lived in Nazi-occupied Holland, and it wasn't a few remote tale for her. She lived via the worst of it. She turned into only a teen, however she confronted hunger, fear, and heartbreak on a each-day basis. Meals turned into so scarce that she needed to devour things like tulip bulbs to live on. Imagine that. This future Hollywood icon, this image of beauty and glamour, digging into tulip bulbs just to get by using. That kind of enjoy leaves a mark. But in place of becoming sour, she had become extra empathetic. She also misplaced humans she loved in the course of the war, which is something that would smash most folks, specifically at this type of younger age. But Audrey did not let it overwhelm her spirit. As an alternative, she seemed to carry the one's reviews with a quiet power. She knew how fragile lifestyles became, and it made her admire the little matters even extra. What is even more notable is how she took that inner electricity and used it to shape her profession and life. Hollywood is a hard vicinity, but Audrey treated it with grace because she'd already survived worse. While administrators or producers wanted her to comply to their concept of what a leading woman should be, she stood her floor. She didn't fit the everyday mildew of a curvy bombshell. However, she grew to become that into her superpower. She wasn't about to let all people tell her what splendor have to appear like. Even later in existence, when she became a UNICEF ambassador, you can see that energy shine through. She wasn't simply lending her call to an awesome motive. She turned into available in some of the toughest locations inside the international, supporting children who were going through their very own hardships. She understood what it felt want to be prone. And that's why she may want to hook up with humans so deeply. Audrey's grace wasn't pretty much the way she walked or talked. It got here from the whole thing she'd been via. She failed to put on her struggles on her sleeve, but they had been there, quietly shaping her into the character every person favorite. Her resilience was the type that did not want to announce itself. It simply radiated from her, making her splendor even more awesome. She spoke several languages. Audrey turned into fluent in English, Dutch, French, Italian, and Spanish. She wasn't simply coasting with the aid of with some phrases. She ought to sincerely hook up with human beings in their very own language. This wasn't simply a sensible skill for her worldwide stardom. It showed her interest and deep appreciation for extraordinary cultures. Her multilingual ability got here obviously because of her specific upbringing. Born in Belgium, raised in the Netherlands, and later living in England and different elements of Europe, she grew up hearing and speaking exclusive languages. It gave her this worldly, state-of-the-art vibe that wasn't compelled. It changed into simply who she turned into. And it wasn't pretty much speaking the words. It became the way she made humans experience. Whether or not she turned into on set in Rome talking Italian or addressing enthusiasts in Paris in French, she made an attempt to talk in a way that felt personal. This is rare, in particular in Hollywood, wherein many stars keep on with their consolation area. Audrey changed into all approximately stepping out of hers to make others experience relaxed. Her fluency also introduced so much to her screen presence. Think of movies like Roman Excursion or Breakfast at Tiffany's. There is this diffused, handy charm approximately her that comes from knowing the sector isn't always one size fits all. Her ability to glide between languages gave her an aspect, especially in technology, while Hollywood stars regularly came across as very American-centric. However, it wasn't just about the glamour. While she worked with UNICEF later in lifestyles, her multilingual talent really shone. Journeying international locations in which she ought to speak to children and their families of their personal language introduced a degree of connection that turned into extraordinarily powerful. It wasn't approximately her being a film megastar. It was approximately her sincerely seeking to understand and assist. Audrey's gift for languages wasn't just a skill. It turned into a mirrored image of her open heart and thoughts. It confirmed her admire for others, her love of getting to know, and her ability to step into a person else's international and cause them to feel visible. That is not simply fantastic, it's inspiring. Her magnetic persona. Audrey Hepburn had a sort of presence that changed into really magnetic. She didn't rely upon grand gestures or loud entrances to show heads. She failed to have to. Her quiet confidence and swish demeanor did all the paintings. It wasn't about annoying attention. It was approximately clearly drawing human beings in, making them experience like they were within the presence of a person awesome but approachable. What set her aside became the manner she carried herself. Whether she turned into on set, at a charity occasion, or honestly on foot right into a room, Audrey exuded an handy elegance that wasn't intimidating, however inviting. She didn't dominate conversations or scouse borrow the spotlight in an overwhelming way. As a substitute, she had this rare potential to make anyone round her experience visible and valued. It changed into like she had a silent information of how to connect with humans on a deeper stage. Her co-stars frequently pointed out this best. Gregory Peck once stated that Audrey had an attraction and a radiance that made her unforgettable. Consider being on a film set filled with Hollywood egos. And here's Audrey, calm, composed, and virtually interested by others. It wasn't just her seams or expertise. It became the manner she made human beings experience like they mattered. Even in her movies, this magnetic presence translated perfectly. Reflect on consideration on Roman Excursion or Sabrina. She didn't play characters who bulldozed their manner through life. Instead, her charm came from subtlety and a form of vulnerability that made her relatable. Audiences were not just looking at a celeb. They have been connecting with a person who felt proper.